Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, and this is the EarthWorks podcast. I am very excited to finally, after how many years have I been bugging you, to get Kevin Cooper on, who, in all disclosure here, was a student of mine at Rutgers in 2003. And so I brainwashed, or I have your grades, by the way. If you piss me off, I'm going to pull those up later.
I did okay.
But yeah, I think you did pretty well. But we've known each other since then, and I've been bugging you for a fairly long time to come on. But I guess at the golf course that you were working at, I guess that was kind of a no-no. And a lot of golf courses I talk to, they just don't want people to get on a public forum, and I understand that. But you were at Lochinvar in Houston, Texas, for 15 years, which is really a pretty special place right there by the airport in Houston. And will you talk a little bit about? First of all, let me just go all the way back. Go through your history so everybody kind of knows where you came. You and I are both Texas natives. You more so than I. I was born there, and then I think at 2 years old I was moved. But you're originally from Texas and worked there for a bit. But then when you were at Rutgers, you were working at Muirfield for 9 years. Talk a little bit about your
Originally from Kentucky,
What did I say?
Texas.
I did say Texas.
Yeah,
we are both originally from Kentucky. I was born in Covington, Kentucky. I'm sorry, paying no attention. But yeah, Kentucky, and so we're fellow Kentuckians. And you spent some time there working, so that you got your. I did not know this until you and I were just talking, but you had a bachelor's from UK in math. And
That's
then
right.
our mutual friend Jeff McMacken convinced you to go on a golf course, and you haven't spoke to him since, I understand. Is that?
Yeah, that's
I
pretty
hope
much
he's
how
watching.
that's pretty much how it goes. I haven't talked to him in 24 hours.
Right, exactly. Which is kind of funny. It's actually kind of cool that, and I just asked you this too, but I knew Jeff because he had been working for one of my distributor partners. So I got to know him a number of years ago. And then somehow through the grapevine, you and I and Jeff kind of realized that we all knew each other. But you just told me that you don't even know how long you've known him because you were probably just outside of the womb from when you guys met.
Yeah,
That's actually very cool.
We grew up. We've known each other all our lives. I mean, it's over 50 years. If you ask him, he said he won't remember when we met. We just always been in each other's lives.
Oh, that's too funny. That's very cool, though. I mean, that really is very cool.
It's very special. It's very special.
But he kind of talked you into getting into golf. So what was the plan? You're going to school for math, and what did you want to do?
Actually, I was going to school for mechanical engineering.
Oh, even worse. I mean, even better. Yeah.
And 3.5 years into it, I decided I didn't want to do that. And what easier way than I already had a lot of math classes. How much easier could that be? Just go ahead and get a math degree versus going into business. I always say if I started off in math, I'd be an engineer today because that's how hard math was to finish.
Oh boy, I can
And
only imagine.
my thoughts were to go to grad school, possibly engineering or business. And so Jeff was working in Laurel, Maryland, and I was visiting with him, and we were partaking in a few adult beverages.
Cheers.
And he stated, "So what are you going to do with a math degree?" I said, "Well, I'll probably get my master's or something." And
your dad was probably saying the same thing, right? Or your mom or somebody.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And
right.
then just like, you worked outside, you grew up out doing stuff outside. You'd probably working on a golf course. So I'm bartending at a Mexican restaurant, and lo and behold, one of the workers' husbands worked at what was formerly known as the Champions. And
in Lexington, Kentucky.
In Lexington.
Yeah.
So I ended up working for Dave Gribler at the Champions at the time, which converted their name to Champion Trace. And then in 2000, Dave Gribler moved to Country Club at Muirfield, and I was going to go work for Dave. And then Mike McBride had the opportunities across the street, and Dave, and I give him all the respect for this, he wasn't selfish, and he actually said, "You're going to be better off across the street, and Mike needs somebody."
Yeah, and he's probably right.
And so I had the opportunity to go work at Muirfield for Mike McBride, and sent me to Rutgers, and then in fall of 03, Mike stepped down and Paul Latchall came in, and I worked for Paul for 5 years. And it was during that market time of 07, 08,
Yeah.
and it was tough to get a job. I was still single. So Paul actually called me up and said, "Hey, there's a job that's open and it has bent grass greens." And I just looked at him and said, "You've never had to tell me that it had bent grass greens before. Where is this located?" And he said, "Texas." So I named off every city that I knew of that had bent grass. And he's like, "Nope, you're missing one city." And I kind of funny looked at him and said, "Houston?" And 2 weeks later, I moved to Houston growing bent grass greens for a few years.
And somebody had dropped you on your head earlier. Is that what happened? I mean, who would want to go do that in Houston, Texas? Anybody
Uh,
that's been to Houston knows that that had to be fun anyway.
yeah, John Scott told me, God rest his soul, John Scott told me, he's like, "You're young,
Yeah.
because anybody with age and knows better wouldn't do this."
Yeah. Yeah. You
Because
had,
10 days after getting here, I had a hurricane I'd hit. So,
oh, welcome to Houston. So
hmm
you spent a total of 9 years at Muirfield Village.
yes,
And working for Mike. Mike was one of the biggest promoters of our program at Rutgers. I mean, there wasn't a year that went by that we didn't have a couple people from Muirfield. But Mike, I mean, like I said to you earlier, Ned Littman, who was running the program at the time, just absolutely loved Mike because there was always a Muirfield guy coming in, and there's I could, there's dozens of them that I, had going through when I was at so you get to Lochinvar, and it's Houston, Texas, and 10 days later you got hit by a hurricane.
correct.
Wow. Welcome to Houston. Had you ever even been in Texas prior to taking this job? I mean, did you know it at all?
No,
So you had
no.
no idea what the weather was like in Houston, Texas.
Well, I knew it was the Gulf Coast. I knew it was a cesspool.
Yes, it's kind of that.
The
Yeah.
humidity level is always there. I had not grown any warm season grass a day in my life, and I was fortunate enough to have a really good assistant that
That
all
knew
he
how to
knew
do
was
it.
warm season. So we came up with a good game plan, and we did bent grass for a couple years, and then we did a conversion to ultra dwarf, and
On
then
the
I started.
greens you're talking now. Yeah.
Yes, then I
So
started.
everything else was Bermuda.
Yeah, it was all the original 419 on the fairway
419s. Yeah.
from
Yeah.
1979, and we had
Yeah.
Zoysia on the tees.
Oh,
Uh,
did
it
you?
it was very old. It hadn't been aerified or cultivated in on the fairways in over 9 years.
So walk me through this. You fly into Houston. It's bloody. What time of year were you there? What time of year did you join? You start?
I interviewed third week of August.
Oh, so it was bloody hot. It was miserably humid and hot. And you walk in and you're looking at a property that's got all this grass that you've never seen before, you've never worked with before, and 3 acres of bent grass. And that's why they hired you, was because of the 3 acres of bent grass.
Correct. Correct.
And then you ultimately got rid of anyway.
Yes. It was a
Wow.
great opportunity because the details were lacking, and it was
Yeah.
as I say, there was so much fruit laying on the ground. I couldn't mess it up. So
I'll take it.
there's only one way to go.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
You can only go up. What was it like? I mean, of all those years, I don't know that I ever even got out there, and I don't get to Houston all that often, but I don't know that I ever had the opportunity. I think we tried a number of times, and our respective schedules just never worked out. You were gone, I was running somewhere else, but I
yeah, the
never
only
got
thing
to
we
see
could
it.
do was go get some beer. That's about it.
Yeah, we got to have some wings and beer a couple of times, but I never got to. So walk me through the property. I don't even know who the architect was, to be honest with you.
It was one of Jack Nicklaus's first designs.
Oh, really?
It
What
was
year?
being built. It officially opened in 1980, so it was being built at the same time as Annandale and Valhalla.
Oh, wow.
So it is one of his first actual true designs.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's
They
pretty
did
cool.
they did a renovation on the greens in the mid 90s. They had a few design associates come in and do some items, but in 2013 we brought Jack back in to look at everything. And then so we did a renovation in 2014 with Jack's actual thumb in it to
Oh, wow.
renovate and bring it back to what he feels it should be. So it was refreshed in 2014. We reduced bunkers from 4 acres to 1 acres.
Oh, that's
Uh,
nice.
it's a very flat piece of property. The elevation change
Yeah.
was, it's debatable 4 or 6 feet from the entrance to the fall part of the course. So we had a lot of sump pumps and drainage that we would have to push, but it's just golf. There was no goofiness to it. There was no, why would you put something here? It was,
Yeah.
um, Mark O'Mara would practice out there while he lived in Houston, and he complimented it as like, this is just a true golf course. It looks easy, but it can be really hard. And we the cultivation needed to be there. I go back, and this is where I go back into our classroom mindset, and I also go back into the old stories of the Dust Bowl days of depletion of your soil. And we went through a drought in 2010 and 2000 going into 2011, and it was real evident when I first got there that it's straight synthetic
Yeah.
fertilizer. And going through the drought, I was like, we have to make a change. We have to give something to where the soil just naturally wants to do what it wants to do. So
Meat and potatoes.
we began supplying, buying organic fertilizers, whatever we could buy cheap I just tried to start building it because of the acreage. We had
Yeah.
140 acres of turf. So it was, how can we build this? We also extended into the pine beds. We had probably about 40, 50 acres of pine beds with large loblolly pines, which is, you can see in the
Yeah.
background, that's the picture. And so we wanted to really protect the trees as well. Mr. Latchall, I had him visit, and we talked about a tree program. And as he says, he goes, Kevin, I'm not a tree hugger, but you can't lose these trees. So
Oh, wow. That's
we
unique for
really
him.
developed an organic program
Yeah.
to where my last years there, we averaged anywhere from 3/4 to a pound and a quarter of nitrogen a year for the Bermuda grass.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Beautiful.
And so we didn't have surges of growth, but when we came into stress times, the plant could be healthier. It took what it needed when it needed it. So
Yeah.
that was the big program to really get it to where we could create details, reduce labor by doing the right products.
Walk me through when you got there. I mean, you got there in the summer, so you're right there in the heat of the time. For people that don't know the Houston market, walk through what it's like. I mean, how would you describe, the environment in Houston to grow grass?
It is challenging no matter what grass,
Yes, that's a good word.
because the Gulf Coast always brings a haze to it or
Yeah,
overcast. So you don't get true UV sunlight. What I did notice, I mean, I showed up on Labor Day, and I felt my first year, it felt cooler to me than working in Ohio, because the sun beating down without the clouds always felt hotter to me. So, like, we just went through a period of it's 80 degrees and no cloud, low humidity of 15%. And I feel it's hotter because when it's 95 degrees and the humidity is 60 plus,
yeah.
you get that haze. So you're not getting
So
full
it's blocking some
sunlight.
of the sunlight. Yeah,
Yeah. Now you have to be protecting, put a lot of sunscreen on,
yeah, I
but it
bet.
doesn't feel as hot when it's beaten down. It's just, you don't go in underneath the shade tree and cool off. You
Yeah,
go underneath the shade
exactly.
tree, you just still keep sweating.
Right.
So the heat here can range sometimes from April to as late into November, and you could be hitting 90s every day.
Yeah.
With humidity, you rarely see the humidity drop below 45%.
What was that like on the bent grass?
Oh, my first summer, I walked out the door, it was 85 and the real field was 95, and I just knew the bent grass wasn't breathing
Yeah,
and growing. So you're in defensive mode all summer long. And really the winter months, you can have enough cold to shut it down.
yeah,
It doesn't last long, but you would see some of it shut down. So it was always a struggle. You were always preparing for the summer stretch all through winter, and you're competing, everybody worries about green speeds. So
yeah.
you're
Of
competing
course.
against ultra dwarf, that the slow for an ultra dwarf down here is 10.5, 11 is the slowest you'll see, whereas that was the fastest on the bent grass.
Oh, really? Was that much of a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is a golf club. I mean, this is men's golf club, and they're I assume you probably had some pretty good golfers.
We had some really good golfers.
And I assume you probably had a couple of hundred superintendents that knew everything about what you do.
Had a few hundred.
Yeah, if you I was going to say, so they were all experts in how to do what you were doing. Interesting. Let's shift here because I want to get into, you've made a change and let's talk about, making a jump, but you are now working with Syngenta and you are a digital sales specialist working on this whole monitoring program, and I'm going to have you explain it because I'm going to do a very bad job. But let me just kind of work our way through that. How did that come about? And I mean, I guess you had told me after 15 years of humidity and high temperatures in Houston, growing grass was, you felt like you'd done it all, right? I was ready.
Yeah, I was ready to make a change, and the opportunity, I'm always a firm believer you have one name in life. It can take 5 seconds to mess it up, but
Yes, that's
forever
not
to
hard,
build it.
is it?
So I felt I built my name well, and the local territory manager, Bart Fox, was asked, did he know anybody that would want to come into Syngenta with this new idea that they have? And they started explaining to him, and he's like, well, you're the math guy,
Right, right.
and reached out to me, and it was just the right time because it's really exciting that Syngenta is going in a different direction on top of the chemistries and all the crops and everything they already do, is that they saw a value in taking data, taking information, and getting into the digital side of things to help the end user make decisions, give them a peace of mind, so to speak. And so I was approached, and they were partnering with doing a collaboration with Speedo soil sensors. So we initially, this first year was really getting that dialed in with Speedo, coming up with the image, what we were going to do, how we're going to integrate Syngenta's information
Yeah,
to be able to put it in the palm of your hand, really.
yeah.
And so the first year was really, you could say it was a startup in a already an established
It
company.
was a startup. I mean, you guys were
Yeah,
the new kids on the block. Nobody, you
right.
probably didn't even know what you were doing yet.
We have evolved rapidly
Yes, I see. I've seen
multiple
that.
times, and I even mentioned it to my manager. Like, you're lucky you've hired a lot of golf course superintendents or golf course assistants because we're so used to walking in every day and something being wrong or changing. So we were able to change directions with you. We're not established, so
Right.
it was a true evolution this year, and integrating GreenCast information, pest risk models. We did it all on the desktop dashboard, but we really knew. I mean, I knew it's like the last thing a superintendent want to do sometimes is sit in the office and look
Right.
at the
I
computer
guess.
because he has a stack of invoices,
Yeah.
and it also gives time for somebody to walk in and complain about something. So,
Right. Or a
you know,
salesman walking in, the last thing you need to see.
so to have this in the palm of your hand. So the real big focus was how can we develop a mobile app to start supplying you with all the information. So we
Yeah.
came out and developed this new GreenCast Connect app that we launched in San Diego. It takes, if it's free to download. So if somebody wants to use our proprietary weather, it's three and a quarter square miles of your property versus a zip code related
Yeah,
weather
exactly.
forecast.
So you're really pinpointing that part.
It's very pinpointed.
Yeah. That's
And
pretty
then
cool.
you have the capability of having pest risk models. If you pay for the next tiers up, you can do growing degree day models.
Yeah.
And if you decide to do sensors, it'll integrate all that and then help forecast what we call hyper local for your property of knowing how to make certain applications based on the pest risks. And it was really exciting for me when talking to my manager at the early stages of taking this job was, where is this going to go? Because there's a lot of sensors out there. There's a lot of
What was
data.
the answer to that question? What did they tell you?
Our end goal is like to have a platform that everybody can integrate other items on. So you have a one desktop dashboard. That's our end goal. But we're in the baby steps in the beginning phase of with the launch of the app and how can we start integrating
Yeah.
other test risk? How can we research? It's not really about just being Syngenta, but we're trying to promote the future of how can we help the end user solve problems without having to, push a chemistry, push something else. We're giving you technology in the palm of your hand to help you get a peace of mind when you're away
Right.
to make a decision or know, you're on vacation, you can get a push notification now
Yeah.
that you may have an elevated risk. And being in the Gulf Coast,
Just what you need is a notification while you're on vacation.
yeah, but in today's world, look at the assistants,
Right.
you have a
They
lot
know
more
what they're
greener
doing.
assistants. So you can feel that you can go away now
Yeah,
or
exactly.
go watch your
Good
kid play
point.
volleyball or baseball on the weekend
Great
and
idea.
know what's going on without having to always make that phone call
Yeah.
or drive in and ride around.
Yeah. It's not all your eyes anymore. Let me ask you this. How old is this program now? How long you been there?
I've been,
Were you the first, you were the second one in, right?
uh, I have my manager. We have our tech manager, which is now a PhD from Virginia Tech.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I
Who's
was
that?
Travis Robertson.
Oh, Travis is working with you guys. I didn't know that.
He just finished up, and congratulations to him. He's got his PhD now. And so he is our doctor.
So how old is this program that Syngenta put together? How long has it been in place?
We officially launched it December of 2023.
So it's pretty new.
It's very new.
So I know my friend Laura Beth West is working with you. She's been here on the podcast, and she's all excited about this. You got a bunch of Noel, and you got Andrew working with you. Are these is everybody from the golf course superintendent world? I mean, I know Laura Beth spent some time on the
Yes.
course,
Noel was an
and
assistant,
Noel
and
did.
Andrew worked his way up. He was an intern for us in '07 at Muirfield, and then
Oh, I
worked,
didn't know that.
worked in Atlanta, and then he was a director down in Florida up
Yeah,
until about a year ago.
yeah.
Our one of our tech specialists, Sally Jones, is up in Minnesota. She was a superintendent and general manager, a Penn State grad.
There you
So
go.
yeah, every single one of us has turf relation. Like we actually been on the other side.
So how big's your team now?
Um,
Sounds like it's growing. So you got
it's
to have a
growing.
dozen almost.
We have the SPIO team that helps on a lot of
Right.
the technical and development on the other side. For our team, you have 4 sales reps that helps the territory managers.
Yeah.
Like we have large territories. My territory is from Texas to the Dakotas. I have Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan. So
Wow. Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's a small little travel. So you're in an airport a lot. Is that the new life?
every now and then there, I
Yeah.
make a few travels.
It's funny because we've talked about this on our podcast, and one of the things that was really evident from this year's GIS out in San Diego was technology. I mean, you saw technology, and I can't tell you how many guys. I mean, between robotic mowers, sensors, all this technology. I actually had superintendents sitting around our booth talking about, I think it's time that we hire a tech specialist on the crew to kind of start managing all of this stuff that's coming out. And needless to say, you guys are right in the middle of all of this. And some of the stuff that you saw out there. I mean, we had on our podcast our friend Dave Wilbur, who's doing Turf Rad, and we've had other folks that have been doing robots and all sorts of stuff. And I'm fascinated by it all. But we're clearly moving in that direction. And let me ask, and I don't know how to ask this, but when we first heard that Syngenta was doing this, it just seemed like it was kind of out of place for who Syngenta is. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I'm really more intrigued than anything. What was the motivation for a company like Syngenta to get into a tech sales support role?
Well, everything is evolving. You got AI, you
Yeah.
have a lot of tech out there.
Yes, you
And
do.
if you're not innovative and start integrating technology, you're behind.
You're going to be, yeah, you're already
And
behind if you're
and
not
they already
there.
established they had the GreenCast website,
Right.
and it was utilized, maybe underutilized sometimes, but this was an opportunity to partner with and collect data, make some evolution, because if technology, we don't have to go to the EPA and get a label for technology.
Right. Good
So we can
point.
make an update, we can make a change, we can make an
Right.
addition, and it can be
It's
quick.
fluid. Yeah. It's not being held
Very
up by stupidity.
It's a very dynamic thing.
Yeah.
And with all the research and all the technology, the battles with generics and so forth, you really, what's the other avenue to give solutions
Yeah.
to the grower?
Yeah.
And technology is where it is. There's so much data, and I think one thing that's always discussed is there's data overload.
There's no question there's data overload. Yeah.
And
It's overwhelming.
I was a data junkie. I
Yes, you
use
were.
Google. I use Google Forms, and I would save it. My assistants type certain ins, but I had it algorithms and calculated for what I wanted to see.
Spreadsheets and all that stuff. Yeah.
But why would you do it other than just to take data? How are you using it?
Yeah.
And that's the question is,
Well, how were you using? I mean, you were a big data guy. I mean, with a math background and engineering kind of background, you were one of the guys that everybody kind of knew in that area was a techie and. So go back beyond, before Syngenta, you were collecting all this data. How were you using that and how were you collecting it back in the golf course days?
you know, I looked at I didn't measure clippings. I did that for a little while. The time and effort it took versus
Yeah, it's
it's
kind of
warm
silly,
season
I think.
grass. I'm spraying a regulator on it no matter what. I'm gonna
Right. You got to regulate. Does clippings mean anything anymore?
I did monitor fertility,
Yeah.
inputs, but really was player satisfaction.
Interesting.
And green speeds are always
Of
discussed.
course, especially in a men's golf club.
But I could have a green speed be the exact same number, but the member would think it's slow. And the reason why, the ball didn't roll out. The ball
Mhm.
stopped on a dime. It could still stamp a 12. But if the ball didn't roll out, I didn't either mow that day or I'm doing something wrong. So I really correlated a lot with dew point and humidity, how the dew point was going to affect. I would keep records of mowing, style, rollers, how many times, directions, verticuts, calculate the top dressing. If I needed to put the top dressing up to keep the dilution rate based on my fertility and my how much organic I disrupted.
Right. And
And
you were doing this from the superintendent's chair
yes,
all those years. So you collected all this data and where did it go? Did you have a spreadsheet? Did you just put it on a yellow notepad? I mean, how did you manage all that data? I mean, this is before a lot of the technology that we're now talking about, but how did you do it then?
Google Forms.
Go
I
you
typed.
oh you said
I
that. Yeah.
seriously I did Google Forms in a way that I would create certain forms that the assistants would download to their home screen. They could
Yeah.
type it in real quick. It dumped into the spreadsheet,
Right.
and I had different columns of how it did, and then it just once I had it all situated, it all integrated.
Yeah.
So the setup was the hard part, but after that, it integrated. And unfortunately, it was all tied to my email. And
Oh,
when I
great.
left, they, email got locked and it didn't get transferred. So there was over 10 years of data that
Oh, that's too bad.
disappeared.
Oh,
So
God. That's horrible. So let's move forward now. So sell me on what it is. I mean, my understanding from briefly talking to you before we got started here is that with the GreenCast and the whole system that you guys are working on, you're really gathering an awful lot of data, aren't you? I mean, you're going, you're dealing with soils. Are you dealing with moisture, and are you dealing with salts and things of that nature? And this product, walk me through, or sell me if I'm a superintendent. Why do I want to do this? And what's the benefit to me?
well, the benefit is now you have it all in the palm of your hand
Which is
in an
pretty
app
which is pretty damn cool if you think about it.
that you now have. Say if you don't have a weather station or you're based on just looking at the weather on an app and a zip code,
Yeah.
You now can open this up. And this is all the weather part is 99% of it's free with the basic download.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So once you establish, you can pinpoint the center of your golf course versus having a zip code, which is about a 35 by 35 kilometer square.
Right.
Ours is 3.25 square miles.
It's your property.
It's your property.
Now, is this just showing me where the weather is? It's not giving me predictions out a week or a
It
couple of
is
days.
it,
It
it's
is.
it is a predictive model. You get 48 hours of hourly. You
Wow.
right now it's 7 to 10 days forecast. You also are able to set up. We have a monitor widget that gives you all the information, whether it's low humidity, high humidity, dew points, leaf wetness, a lot of the weather that for a superintendent is very valuable. But you can actually designate what you see to get an alert on. So you can actually, it's very interactive. So if
Right.
you have a low humidity, like here locally, the humidity's been at 15%. That is very dry for this area.
For you guys. Yeah.
It would give you an alert. You get a notification. It's like, oh, you're dipping down. So maybe you need to go check your moisture.
Yeah.
If somebody's put an application out and they need a perfectly dry leaf tissue, they can actually forecast out when they see the leaf wetness.
The
You
leaf
know,
wetness is part of that weather app?
correct.
Wow. So does this eliminate my need to have a weather station or a independent? I mean, a lot of guys, certainly here on the East Coast, there's a lot of weather businesses, weathermen that do this and they send prediction models and all that stuff. Am I eliminating all of that potentially?
Not necessarily. I think still on site because most places have a lightning protection system.
Well,
Um,
sure, that makes sense.
some of them are still integrating a radar, but we are currently working on how we're going to integrate the radar system into ours as well. We're currently in development of our own weather station that's small enough that's cell driven, solar powered to do in microclimates, so you could actually have better viewpoint of your golf course.
Oh, wow,
But
that's
still, I
great.
think like our rain is still a predictive model,
Yeah.
and to have a true rain gauge on the property currently is you still need one like
Yeah,
that.
a rain gauge would make perfect sense because you at least want to
And
know.
then, we're not integrated into an irrigation system yet. That's down the road,
Yeah, that's got to be
hopefully.
your next step, I would hope. Yeah.
So you have some weather stations that integrate with
Yeah.
irrigation systems for individuals. But really, if you're waking up in the morning, I had 5, 10 apps that I would look at, and I would find the app that made me happy, and go on about my day. And
Oh,
but
that,
now
yeah.
But now you can actually you can take our home screen and you can put as many of the weather feature widgets on there or as little as you want to see on
Gotcha.
that capability. But with our weather, you now integrate it into one of the other nice features is you have a quick monitor of a pest risk model so you can see whatever diseases that we offer as a quick snapshot on your home screen. But there's also a spray monitoring window to help make predictions if you need to go do a spray. It can tell you whether it's good, kind of be cautious, or don't spray because based on the weather pattern.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
that's just in our weather feature.
So Syngenta would actually tell me not to spray?
It would actually give you a recommendation of like you might not want to look at this,
Wait till tomorrow, yeah.
exactly. So you can
Can,
actually help predict it.
will that weather forecasting give me an idea as to, if I want to put out a flushing program, I know I'm going to get enough rain that it'll, there is rain in the next day or two. I mean, are you confident enough or can I be confident enough that I could use it for something like that?
Are you confident in the weatherman when he tells you
That's
50%?
the, I, as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that probably is just a stupid question, but
Now, if you
most
have
of mine are.
100%, you can look at cloud cover. That's the things you
Yeah,
can look at how cloud cover for applications. But for flushing, you definitely can look at if you're integrated with the sensors, you'd have threshold monitoring with salinity, moisture, and temperature.
right.
Where if your salinity is getting high, you can actually monitor when you're going to do a flush. So if you
Perfect.
think it's going to rain and it does rain, did it really rain enough to move the salts past the soil sensor? Or
But you'll
should
see
you
that on your sensor, though, right? You'll
correct?
see. I mean, if you get an inch of rain, is the salt actually out of there? So you
Correct.
can actually, so that data is on your handheld.
Yes.
That's unbelievable. That's truly unbelievable. I mean, speaking as an old guy in this business, I mean, and you've heard me say this 100 times. I probably said it even in Rutgers, is that I still think salts are the most limiting factor for the golf course superintendent. And if you can have that kind of data at your fingertips,
Yes,
like you said earlier, I mean, the thing I love about this technology as much as anything is it'll allow you actually to have a life. And
correct.
and you've certainly been at golf courses where you probably didn't consider having a life between Muirfield and Loch Navar. I'm sure you were, one of those crazy, there all the time. But I mean, I think that's changing. It's just changing naturally. I mean, the generations behind you and me aren't working the way you and I work,
No,
and but this is going to give them the opportunity. It's funny because I said this to even my team. I mean, I've got a team of, 30 and young 40s, and, they're not going to work the way I work. But, the question I laid on them was, how are you going to get done what we need to get done without doing, I mean, I was never home, which is not a great lifestyle. And nobody with two or three kids wants to miss, little league and all that stuff. So it really sounds like with what we're seeing in all this technology, if we're not overwhelmed by the sheer data, the technology is going to let you have a life. I mean, I think that you should use that as a marketing. That you can steal that from me.
it is. No, it is one
Yeah,
of our things is you can actually enjoy life.
you can have a life.
As being, I did high end for 24 years,
Yeah,
and it is a different lifestyle. And uh, the great perspective for me was I travel now, and you're doing it. You're hitting the road. You're flying. You're traveling. But when your son actually looks at you and say, your schedule used to be this, this, and this, and I would have this many hours a week that I knew I could do stuff with you versus I love this new job. I get to spend the weekend with you.
mm, yeah.
There's a great perspective on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And you can probably also schedule around, major family events. I mean, if he's got
right.
if he's got an issue, a big event coming up or whatever he's doing, you can usually schedule around that in your lifestyle. But are
But
you
but
actually, when you're traveling, are you actually going out onto golf courses?
yes.
Yeah. So you're actually now getting a perspective that you probably never had prior as well. You're seeing superintendents from all walks of life and all environments. I mean, you're no longer stuck in god awful Houston or god awful Central Ohio weather. So you're probably seeing all sorts of cool things.
No, it's a great opportunity. I like how like what you said about information about how guys are looking at they may need to have a tech manager. Given the young generation that wants to have a phone in their hand half the day anyway,
Yeah.
that's how it's going to go is but if you think about technology evolution, I mean, we dealt with sensors 20 years ago, handhelds were wired in a green
Yeah.
24 years ago to where the way cell service has improved, it's given the opportunity to really evolve some of this. And we're never going to replace the handhelds because the handhelds are quick.
You're
What we're
right.
trying like
Exactly.
what we're doing is if we can give you a perspective of your volumetric water or your salinity, monitoring temperature for pest risk, but even just our other stuff, you're not having to call. I mean, I can tell you how many times I would text or call while on vacation. Hey, how's the golf course look?
Right.
Are we or have we watered this? Have we watered that? And you come back and you start questioning, like, are you sure you watered it?
Right.
Or
Right.
or I think you over watered it.
Yeah.
And you're not micromanaging, but you can have a perspective of your course, even though your wives may not like it. You can still look at the app, see the notification, turn off a notification, but see what you want and enjoy life,
Right.
knowing that there's extra stuff that you know what you're doing. And money is time, and if you can move an application or hit the application, because there's guys up north that got hit with takeoff patch because it warmed up too quick last year.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, they fought it all summer. They stressed all summer. But if they were able to have a notification saying, "Don't worry about mowing today, get the spray out," their lives would have been so much easier for the next 3 to 4
So
months.
you're able to dial this down to that level of information. Go out and spray today. based on all the weather, all the day. I mean, you're gathering all sorts of stuff. So you could actually come confidently and say to a superintendent, yeah, today's a day to go out and spray for what X,
It's
Y,
a
or
good
Z.
recommendation. You can have a good
Yeah.
recommendation
Well,
of,
based on, I mean, having all that data, I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? I mean,
if
all
you
of these things
stay
affect it.
warm in the soil for 3 days and it's hitting a target range that
Yeah.
you might need to get the pre-emergent out sooner than you think. Fairy
Yeah.
ring was one of our biggest ones down here on the ultra dwarf greens that it could sway 3 weeks early or 3 weeks late based on how you were coming out of winter.
And
And
I mean, that's a lot of that is just moisture, right? I mean, just how much moisture was held in the soil.
yeah, moisture and soil temperatures,
Yeah.
it's coming out in the spring. And if you can get that perspective, because, everybody gets caught up of like up north, you got to bring people back to work, but you're trying to get out and mow because you're getting pressured on green speeds, how the course looks, making it pretty.
Right.
And you may push an application because it's on the calendar for a certain date.
Yeah.
But you would have that information give you a notification, and it would just be like a little poke of like, maybe you should look at this. Don't forget, the calendar may say this, but you might want to get this done.
Yeah, and the data kind of supports it. How on this system, how much information are you getting across the course on moisture in the soil? I mean, are you how far do the sensors go, or how
It's
much data?
pinpoint. It's just really pinpoint because you're in ground sensors, so it's not reaching a broad spectrum. It's really pinpoint in that vicinity where the
Right,
sensors are.
right.
So utilizing them, my recommendation is if you're looking for your 40-acre application for your fairways or your rough, find a marker out there, put a sensor at the 2-inch depth strictly for soil temperatures.
Yeah,
Strictly use it for that pest application timing.
right.
On the greens, it varies. What's your goal? But everybody has what I call the canary in the mine.
Yeah,
Everybody knows that spot on the green that's bad. It's
right.
going to turn dry or stay too wet. Interesting if you're irrigating with bad water, knowing that limit of, oh, I'm pushing the salinity to this point, and my turf's going to start going the other way. I could be monitoring all that based on where I want to put those sensors.
Yeah,
So there's a lot
exactly.
of different for a green. There's a lot of different variables. That's why I say the handhelds are never going away because you can hit more spots.
Right.
But you could put these in certain locations to give you a notification to take a look.
Yeah. And one thing I've always said, golf course superintendents are probably some of the most intuitive people that I can even imagine. I mean, you spend 15 years on a property, driving up and down, walking it. I mean, you know where those spots are.
Yeah.
So, what you're doing here is you're supporting intuition. I mean, superintendents know, they could feel the weather, they can see what there's some wilting going on. But when you tie that into this level of data, I hope, and I don't think it makes anybody lazy. I think it just confirms
Yes.
their intuition. The other thing that I'm really excited about with all this kind of data, and you guys are certainly forefronting this, and there's a lot of folks doing this. As a soil biologist, it's imperative that if we're going to keep microbiology active, we've got to have moisture and relatively low salinity. So, I mean, these tools are moving biological soil management further as well because we now know we can keep moisture in the profile. We can keep salinity at bay. And I've said this 100 times on my podcast, but I remember sitting around at Rutgers talking with instructors. One of the hardest things that all the instructors really battled was how do you teach a bunch of young wannabe superintendents how to water? Like you
Yeah.
said earlier, I mean, a lot of times it's the biggest damage I see on golf courses is overwatering. And I also see a young superintendent that's, maybe a little ahead of himself, got a new job and is a little bit scared, doesn't quite have the level of intuition on their property. What's the first thing you're going to want to do? You're going to pull hoses and start watering, and if not, if we can accomplish the management and the art of watering through this kind of technology, man, that changes the game completely, completely changes that game.
Yeah, and that's where like the handhelds first really started establishing that was, you know, hand water bent grass was an art form. All hand watering was an art
Yeah,
form.
it
You
is.
knew how to feel it. You knew, but the thing is, it's a subjective thing to the individual and how they look at it and hold
Yeah,
it. And when we started introducing the handheld sensors at Muirfield, it was we could start correlating a number for those other people to water, like so they could understand. We could also show the artistry with the number.
right.
And you may not have somebody that understands, oh yeah, no, it's too wet or it's too dry in their perspective. But if the number's saying it, they can actually trust that number a little bit more. Like, oh, okay, I'm doing it right. But yeah, artistry on that is, water's the most valuable resource we really have. And you're going into
Right.
areas that people overwatering, it's a detriment. So
Yeah, it's your biggest input, and in many parts of the country, and you're learning this now that you're getting around, it can be the most expensive input. I mean, we've got I just talked to Kevin Hicks the other day, and he's got guys that are now spending well over $2 million on water, which is
wow,
ridiculous. I mean, that's just absurd, and that's not going to get better. I mean, it's only
no,
going to get worse. And in places in the country where they spend very little for water, they're going to spend more for water. I mean, water is going to start costing money, and a lot of times the water, and this is an agronomic term, the water sucks. It's the worst input you've got, and if it's causing you, the headaches. One of my I talk a lot about, when talking about sodium induced wilt, where you've got a lot of sodium in there, and potassium is weak, and you're
yep,
getting a flush of sodium, and it wilts. But a lot of superintendents will see that and say, oh, I see wilt, and you immediately think it's environmental, and you pull out a hose, when in fact that becomes part of the problem. This kind of data is going to confirm that.
yes.
Let me ask you this: when, as a superintendent, how did you teach new guys how to water? How do you teach the art of watering? It sounds like you did it with some meters, but
Yeah, and it's a very hands-on thing. So I think one of the biggest challenges was when I came down here with
yeah,
grass greens
yeah, I bet.
and everybody, the guys that were watering, there was a philosophy, and this is a philosophy that there was a lot of acid coming from the rain that so they would go out there and flush the greens by hand with hoses after a rainfall
Because of the acid in the rain?
because there was a thought that they may change the pH, and so we had to create a different mindset of how to water with the
Wow.
bent grass. And really, it was like the guy that's still there, probably watering, was my first person I taught on how to syringe a green or not overwater, but to water properly. And he's still doing it there today. And once we started coordinating, I pretty much started with one guy and the
Yeah.
assistants. Fortunately, one of my assistants that came was an intern for me at Muirfield, Chris Ulrich, and so he already understood the watering mindset. So once we could do that, it was a one-on-one in overtime, but it was a physical, daunting duty of monitoring and correcting when they were, doing it wrong because guys would just like
Yeah.
turn the hose on and off and still aim at one place and it would create a puddle. So
Right.
there was a lot of that and showing the numbers, going behind and checking. And that's
Yeah.
where I think utilizing sensors now, I can know if somebody overwatered. I can know if they underwatered. I
Right.
can see, if your salinity's high and you're on vacation, you could even schedule a flush.
So
But
you
it's
can do that from your phone from Bermuda
yeah.
or wherever you might be. Let me ask you this. As you're getting around now and traveling and talking to superintendents all across the Midwest about this, the GreenCast system, is it overwhelming? I mean, do you have to walk them through? I mean, as an old guy, I look at something like this and I could get overwhelmed fairly quickly. Are you running into that with superintendents, and
Oh yeah.
or are they? How do you get them around that? How do you walk them through it, and help them understand that this
I
is,
think, I think it's really just based on the conversation to see where they are
yeah,
and understand how much information they can learn and understand. Because I mean, I've been doing it now for a year, and uh, it can be, it's natural for me. I understand it really well. So
yeah,
to go in and understand what their issues are to highlight the benefits of the app just for those issues, just to talk about how that can help them without showing them all the extra features, because
Right.
that's something you can learn over time. So
Right.
it's
Right.
really
Basics.
the basics. It's I always tell superintendents like myself, the hardest thing for a superintendent ever was to sit on your hands, because you always want to do something and you can be your
Right.
worst
You're
enemy.
antsy.
And so the same thing goes on this side is I sit on my hands, so to speak, to make sure I target what the audience really needs, because you don't know unless you listen. So
Right.
that's the first thing, is just getting to know them and seeing how we can help them by hearing what their struggles are or what keeps them up at night.
Right. That's my favorite line is what keeps you up at night. What of all the things that you guys now have to offer, and it sounds like a lot. What's the one that gets you in the door? I mean, where do you start with a superintendent when you're? I mean, I can see you walking into my office and me being a little overwhelmed with the breadth of information that is going to come at me, and then of course, like we had started with, what do I do with all this? Where do you start? What's the one thing that really kind of gets them, thinking about this?
Um, it really ranges on a lot. Like it depends. Are they a technology person? If they're not a technology person, if they
Right.
are a technology individual, it's easier to start talking about more of the in-depth things. But I really like to highlight the weather and how it's
Good.
pinpointed for your location, and then the pest risk models that you can get
Right.
based on that.
That makes sense.
Just to start with that. And you know, if you're in a certain part of Nebraska, you're not worried about Pythium. You're going to be worried about dollar spot.
Right. Exactly.
But if you're in my neck of the woods down here in the
You're
Gulf
worried about
region,
everything.
you worry about everything
Yeah,
throughout
exactly.
the whole year. And so typically, what everybody struggled with in the region, whether it was take all root rot, or
Right.
there's always everybody's fighting polo down and for germination, but you kind of highlight how it can help them make a better application.
Right. Makes sense.
But really, it's also, we have the capability to show those pest risks, but we also have a notes feature to where it's something to show. It's like if you're part of an organization, you can drive around, take a note, take a picture, and if you're assistant, they can see that same note and picture that you just took.
Right.
So it's the communication factor before we really start talking about sensors, because sensors can be overwhelming if you're not used to utilizing technology.
Yeah, I would think. What do you I mean, you've been doing this now for a while. What do you think the percentage of technically oriented superintendents are? I mean, is it 20%? Is it 10%? Are you really dealing with a small group that really just loves the technology and jumps on it?
You have a small pool that just absolutely loves it and jumps on it. You have a
Right.
few other that it intrigues
The
because
early
they know.
adapters.
The early adapters. You also have those that, you know, if you think about when the robot mower, the autonomous mowers were starting to be talked about, everybody, there's no way in the world. Then you have the early adapters utilizing them, but now you're having some individuals go, I might need to start looking at that.
Oh yeah. That's what you're
Same,
seeing today.
so that's the same thing with the sensor technology and getting this type of technology in your hands. They may not agree with it, but they know that's where it's going.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like GPS sprayers. Eventually,
It's all part of this technology. That's why we need a tech manager on the golf course now.
yeah. So, but the question is that if you run into somebody and they say, "I hate technology, I don't
Right.
need technology," and my first question then was, "Please, can I see your cell phone?"
Yeah, I
Pull
was
out your
gonna
cell
say,
phone,
just hold this thing up and it's
because if they pull it out and it's not a flip phone,
right,
they have a
exactly.
computer. They now have a computer in their pocket, and then I'll ask if they use Waze. Do you use Waze, Google Maps, or which map feature do you like? And
Right.
they'll name one, and I'm like,
Do they
oh,
text? I mean, even that's
so but you print up MapQuest anymore,
yeah,
or you
or
go
go to AAA and get
and go to
yeah.
AAA. So
I'm
now
showing
you're,
my age, but yeah, I used to live off of those.
but when you have that, the reality of, oh, okay, you now trust something to tell you where to go. This is the same thing.
Yeah, no, no
And
question about it.
and it's a tool. It's never going to replace who
Yeah,
you are. It's just another tool in your
Yeah.
toolbox to just make you better and the team better.
You know, what's really cool is, talking to you, talking to Laura Beth, I mean, you guys are all excited about what you guys are doing. I mean, it's really been very cool. I mean, obviously a bunch of, former supers or grass growers, and now you got all this really cool stuff and, and it's changing so fast. I mean,
Yes.
we've just, as a company, we've just really embraced AI. And I was talking to my marketing guy, and editing is real important. And it's usually done by hand. He threw it through AI and spit it back to me in a half a minute, and I'm like, well, that's brilliant. I mean, that's as good as anything any of us would have ever done, and better than. What's the where are we in 5 years? Where is all this in 5 years? What happens?
Oh, 5 years, it's around the world.
Yeah, I mean, look at
It's
5 years
global.
ago. We didn't have robots 5 years ago. We
Yeah.
didn't have any of that. Did we have sensors? We were just probably bringing sensors in. I mean, actual sensors. I mean, all these technologies are really kind of brand new. But I mean, there's not many golf courses I go to anymore where you don't run into a autonomous mower. At least one.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
now guys are talking about getting the gangplanks and mowing fairways. And my question was, well, what happens to all the retired supers or the lawyers that want to just mow fairways as a retirement? You know?
well, they get to pick up golf balls in the water.
Right. They can scuba dive. There you go.
Yeah,
There'll be a
no,
robot for that too, though. You know that. There'll be one
yeah,
soon.
no, I know. Yeah, it is definitely the technology to see where it's gone in the past 5 to 10 years to where it's going to be.
Yeah.
That's where you talk about the tech managers. You're going to you could see
There's going to be tech
a
managers.
fleet of autonomous mowers,
Sure.
and you're now luring people that maybe never thought about working outside and doing the physical labor. They're now intrigued that they get to do tech,
No, that's
use the
interesting.
phone,
Yeah. Yeah.
do some hand, stuff with their hands. Um, on our end, it's integrating a lot more information to help. Is AI? Where's AI going to take it? Can you help do a predictive model to suggest a chemical to spray, or
Yes.
can you utilize that to calculate degradation based on the weather?
Yes.
Oh, I sprayed and I was supposed to get 14 days.
Yeah.
No, you're getting 10
Right.
because Mother Nature's telling you you're getting 10.
Because all this data is now being fed into this thing, and it's kind of crazy. Are you learning? I mean, you personally, I
Um,
mean, has this
uh,
been an experience?
oh, it's not. I'm not bored. There's
I
constant
bet.
learning. It's exciting to you know uh, if you're not challenging yourself,
Right.
so it's a great experience to learn and meet new people, see a different angle, get to go to properties right around. We may not talk about the product one bit, but they know that I grew grass.
Right.
They it's a good cathartic type thing of, okay, you can just listen to them and have empathy, but then you can remind them, like, call to the guy down the road because guarantee he's suffering just as well you
He's
do.
doing, yeah, he's going through the
You're
same
not in a
crap.
bubble. You're not
Yeah.
in a bubble. But no, it's been a constant learning experience.
I'm excited for you. I think it's really good. And like I said, I want to encourage you to also throw this into the bag of reasons. The whole, soil microbiology needs this
Yeah.
technology because if we can keep, salinity down and moisture at a good even keel across the board, it's when you have these highs and lows that kills everything. If we can just keep everything, fertility, moisture, salinity at a fairly even keel, which I think we're going to be close to in the next 5 years, if not, even sooner. Microbiology, soil biology, biological soil management is only going to get better and better. And that's,
Yeah.
so obviously I'm throwing my bias out, but I am very excited for you. I mean, I certainly, a couple times we had beers. I could see, I watched your hair change. I mean, I saw you go through a lot of stuff. And it just, you just seem to have a much brighter, bounce in your step now. And I just love what you guys are doing. And, obviously I would encourage anybody. How do people get a hold of you guys if they want to learn about this? I mean, I would assume it's fairly simple, but what's the
It
step?
one of the steps is reach out to their territory manager. Anybody in Syngenta,
Any Syngenta person can turn them on to you guys.
absolutely, but they also can go on to GreenCast.
Oh, perfect.
.com. We also have GreenCast Connect as a site as well. So that's the first step. But really reaching out to the territory managers can
So
get them.
it's not going to be hard to find you guys at all, is it?
It's not at all. You can reach out to us through GreenCast or GreenCast Connect. You can put an inquiry in.
Right.
You can go on the mobile app right now. You can download GreenCast Connect through any app.
It's just GreenCast Connect. That's the mobile app.
GreenCast Connect by Syngenta, and so it's on iPhone and Android. They can download that and do a basic version. You can upgrade to where we have a second tier is advanced, to where you get all the benefits but no sensors. And then if you want to do sensors, you put in an inquiry, and one of us, and wherever you're located, myself, Laura Beth, Noel, or Andrew will be reaching out.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm like I said, I'm real happy for you. I mean, I've kind of followed your career since Rutgers days, and I just think this is very cool. I hope the travel isn't exhausting, but it sounds like, like you said, I said this to Kevin Hicks when he joined me. He was afraid of the travel, and I say to anybody that leaves, when you guys were superintending, you were, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you were home at 6 and you were in bed at 7. You weren't available. Now you're home when you want to be home, and you got the weekends. And I am sure your son loves this. So even though you might not be home, I hope your wife loves that, or the pool boy loves it. Somebody loves it, but yeah, I'm happy for you, dude. And I can't thank you enough for coming on finally. And I'm excited. I'd like to get you back in, every year and just kind of go through the updates.
Oh, absolutely. No, I
have a feeling we could do this every year, and you'll tell me something brand new in the next.
Oh, we could probably do this every 6 months. You never know.
That's probably true.
Yeah. But we may have to do one like in person, over a bourbon or a beer.
That's not a bad idea. I mean, both Kentucky guys, so I think that sounds like a good plan to me. Kevin, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck. Like he said, you can easily find the GreenCast folks, and or anybody in Syngenta will turn them on. And I mean, I love the fact that all you guys are in the digital side are all grass growers. So I mean, there's always some help there. I mean, it's always good. And quite honestly, I can't imagine anybody not wanting to have Kevin Cooper show up on their golf course and walk around and see what's going on. So it's worth a call just for that. So there you have it. There's my sales pitch for you. Thanks, Kevin. And if you have not subscribed to the EarthWorks podcast, please do. We'll tell you when we get Kevin back on in 6 months or a year and go back through all this. Best of luck, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir.